Hello everyone, my name is Hafiz. I'm an English tutor from HZad Education. For this video, I'm going to continue CELPIP speaking tasks. So now we're on to task 2, which is talking about personal experience. Now we have already fully discussed the first task, so if you want to check it out, please feel free to check out my previous video on CELPIP task 1. So let's get on with task 2. So, as I mentioned, task two will be about talking about your personal experience. The prompt will always ask you to talk about past experience, and that can be a variety of topics. So, one of the things that you do need to be very aware of when it comes to this task is that you do need a very good creativity. Because I'll talk a little bit about that in a sec. But basically, the time preparation that you get is still the same, 30 seconds, and only have 60 seconds to speak. So that's um, slightly shorter. So in the first task, you get 90 seconds. Here, you only get 60 seconds. Okay, so that's basically the overall structure of the second task. Now, I'm going to jump immediately into the important points because these are points that will get you to that 10 or even beyond. So, the first important point that I'm going to highlight for this task is you do have to make notes. Very crucial to make notes for this one because, again, this talks about your personal experience. In the first task, right, more or less the same. Here, probably more crucial because, again, you only have 60 seconds. So, it's very crucial not to go over that time or not finish your answer before the time ends. 30 seconds shorter is quite significant. The second one is ask the five W's every time. When it comes to personal experience, you do have a lot to usually explain. Now, of course, when I said you have to finish before 60 seconds, that doesn't mean you should finish any or like a lot sooner. Let's say your answer is only 30 seconds. No, you should try to get as close as possible to 60 seconds. You should use up as much time as you can. And the only way that you can do that for this particular question is by asking the five W's: who, what, when, where, or why. Now, you don't have to ask, like, you don't have to answer all five W's. If you can only answer three out of five, that's completely fine. But basically, that's the guidance. Those questions, those five W's, will help you identify the things that you can say that's related to the personal experience being in question. The third point is that this is something that I very much highly recommend. Come up with the easiest answer. Don't force the truth. Why do I say that? Because I have seen so many participants of CELPIP and also IELTS forcing the truth on a question that they feel like they're knowledgeable about or they're quite familiar about. And it ended up backfiring, mainly because I've explained this before as well. Sometimes the truth can be more complicated than you think. Like inside your head, it sounds okay, it sounds smooth, you feel confident explaining it, but once it comes up out of your mouth, you notice that there are a lot of loopholes or things that you feel the need to elaborate just a little bit more, and that causes you to use up more time, not finish your answer properly, etc. So I highly recommend you to just to come up with the easiest answer. This is why I said in the beginning that you do need a good creativity for this question, because it's much better to just invent an answer rather than thinking, oh, whether you have like whether you actually do have that personal experience. So keep that in mind. The fourth one is don't forget to use past tense and a descriptive language. So what does that mean? Number one, of course, because this is a personal experience, it has already happened. So the dominant tense will be in the past tense, right? You might use simple tense when you kind of revert back to the present, but that usually makes it quite complicated. I don't recommend that if you don't yet have a good command of your English language. So stick to the past tense. Now, do you want to stick to just one particular tense, simple, continuous, right? If you do want to stick to just one particular tense, then stick with simple past tense. But again, one of the criteria for self-tip speaking is your grammatical range. So if you want to get a 10 or be or higher than that, you want to make sure that you use a variety of grammatical structures. So not just simple tense, but also continuous, uh, perfect, perfect continuous, etc. Okay? And when it comes to descriptive language, of course, you have to describe things that is happened that happened in your personal experience. You may also describe the items that you mentioned. Sorry. You might also want to mention, describe the items that are in your personal experience or the timing, etc. So basically, this is an expansion of the who, what, when, where. Like if you say who, like my best friend, maybe you want to add my best friend ever since kindergarten. If you say the what, like oh, in the mountains, you go like oh, it's in the mountains somewhere in Europe where it's usually very cold. You add a little bit more description to your main points. So that is the fourth one. The fifth one is please answer all of the prompts question because usually you do get sub questions or follow up questions in that same prompt. So you have to make sure you answer all of them and not leave anything blank. The sixth one is please make a closing sentence. So that's going to be the final important point that I'm going to mention. Like I said, use up as much of the 60 seconds as you can, but you have to make sure that there is a closing sentence at the end to indicate that you have clearly closed off your answer properly because that kind of shows skills, of course. And last but not least, it has a significant impact on your cohesion. Because if you don't finish your answer, that means, well, it's an abrupt stop. So no cohesion there. All right. So those are the six important points that I'm going to highlight for task two. Now we're going to take a look at the sample answer and see how we can answer them. Okay. Now here is a sample question. So for the sample question, the first one is talk about a book you've read recently. What was it about, and what did you think of it? The second one is describe a trip you took recently. Where did you go, and what did you do? What did you enjoy most about the trip? So you can see that there are a couple of questions in that one prompt for each one. So I'm not going to give you a full demonstration of how the answer looks like, but basically how you should approach it, right? So let's focus on the first one. Talk about the book. Your first thought, if you are me, I'm gonna go like, I don't even remember the last time I read a book. And if it is, it's probably something to do that's business or management theoretical stuff that will take too long to summarize or explain, and it's just too complicated as well. So I'm not gonna go there. I'm gonna think of the simplest book that I can explain that I still have a vivid memory of. Right, it's not like my favorite book or anything, but I do have a clear memory of it, and that's Goosebumps. Right. For those of you who are, Goosebumps, that's an easy book to explain. So whenever you come across any question in with this type of prompt, that's the first thing that you should immediately decide. Like, what are you going to talk about that is quite easy for you to explain, right? If you are knowledgeable at the topic that you're talking about, that you're going to say, that's fine, but make sure you are being careful at what being knowledgeable is about because you don't want to overcomplicate your answer, nor do you want to speak too much to the point that you don't finish your answer. So I would stick with something simple, right? So again, after I've picked that topic, goosebumps, then I start brainstorming each questions in that 30 seconds. What was it about? Monster, ghost. I can pick any random ghost, like or monsters, right? That I can think of, like in any movies, and just stick it to the goosebumps title. The examiner won't check, so I'm just I can say like, oh, specifically it was about vampires. So I would pick a monster, of course, that I'm very familiar about, right? And what did I think of it? Of course, that I can make up, right? I'll pretend that I love it, and then I'll pick a description that's the easiest to explain. So the description being the story of the book or the takeaway that I got from the book, right? You can talk about maybe cheesy things, that's fine as long as you elaborate quite well. For example, the power of friendship, right? Like none of this has to actually be true, but it does have to make sense. Now, if I'm going to talk about goosebumps, vampires, maybe power of friendship is not, a great idea. So maybe talk about bravery, right? About how someone faced the fear and ending up having to face this vampire in the end, winning the battle with his friends, right? Working together. Maybe power of friendship can be a sub information in that matter, right? So that's basically how the planning should look like. So just to give you a brief example, but I'm not gonna probably speak for 60 seconds, but I'll give you a general idea of what your answer should sound like. It's gonna be something like this. So I recently read Goosebumps, specifically about vampires. So this tells the story of a group of children who are haunted by this menacing vampire in a very small city somewhere in America, and it kind of demonstrate their coming of age story as well, how they grew up, worked together, and ending up winning against this vampire in the end. So this book really touched my heart because it has that feeling of working together with your friends, facing a fear. It doesn't have to be a vampire. In my case, I also have a lot of fears, but these children, they had to face this really terrifying monster because if they don't, they might cause a lot of people to die. And in that sense, this that requires really significant bravery. So it just got to me quite deeply, and I was touched by it to the point that, all right, yeah, I'm gonna face my own fear now after reading that book. So that's really a book that I will remember for a long time. Something along that line, right? I did not time that. Might be over 60 seconds, might be below that, but the approach is more or less the same. Okay. Uh, I don't think I need to do question number two, but basically that's what you need to do for task two in CELPIP. So hopefully that helps you guys. If you have any question, feel free to leave a comment below. And don't forget, in HZad Education, we also have additional materials that you guys can use and learn or practice to improve your CELPIP speaking ability. So please feel free to check out the link in the description below. And if you have any question regarding that as well, feel free to leave a comment. All right, guys, that's my time. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.